This is Our View, brought to you by the people who work for you, the proud members of the Washington Federation of State Employees. The federal budget pays for all sorts of things, from defense to parks and transportation. However, just how the tax package is put together to pay for these things, if not done with some care, can be a major cause of even more inequality. Bill Spriggs, chief economist for the AFL-CIO, explains.
The result is that you start to distort the marketplace. So when the top 1%, which is what's going to happen in the United States, control 20% of the income, then it means they buy 20% of everything in the United States. So obviously it tilts the market in their direction because a business is chasing dollars. It's not chasing people. So on some things it doesn't matter because the rich don't buy 20% of the eggs. But 20% of income, they're buying close to 30-40% of housing. They're buying a lot of education. So in those instances, they tilt the price level because the market is trying to go to chase the dollars. So housing prices, as income inequality rises, housing prices become distorted. The income movement of the top 1% determines the market, not the middle. And the result is, in U.S. city after U.S. city, higher income inequality, less housing affordability. Education is the same way. As we de-invested in our public universities, and we said, your market, go after the dollars. Well, the people with the dollars are in the top 1%. So we shouldn't be surprised. There was a recent study by Raj Chetty out of the University of California and Emmanuel Saez from the University of California showing that so many of our top flagship universities, they have more students from the 1% than from the bottom 40%. Even though obviously there are more American kids in the bottom 40% than there are American kids in the top 1%. But the dollars are with the 1%, not with the 40%. And the 40% don't even have a meaningful share of income. So that is how, when you cut the tax rate at the top, you distort so many things.
Speaking of inequality, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has released a report titled How's Life? It found that there are very deep divisions among populations. Your age, gender, where you're born will often suggest your quality of life and your future.
Deep fault lines run through our society. The statistics are clear. Where we were born, our education, our age, our gender, and our income are crucial factors affecting well-being and opportunity. We are divided by generation. Young people are more than twice as likely to be unemployed than the over 25s, and with less career experience, people under 30 with jobs earn 30% less than middle-aged workers. We are divided by education. People with only primary education are less likely to say they are in good health, are more likely to be unemployed and feel less safe. Poorly educated men live nearly 8 years less on average than those who have been to university. For women, the gap is nearly 5 years. We are divided by wealth. A mere 10% of OECD households own more than half of all household wealth, and more than 1 in 3 people in 25 OECD countries surveyed are only 3 months of income away from falling into poverty. And we are divided by where we were born. Migrants' household incomes are on average 25% lower than for the native born. Migrants are more likely to work in poor conditions, be overqualified for their jobs, and report lower life satisfaction than the rest of the population. A divided society undermines democracy. A survey of 11 countries finds that manual workers make up 44% of the population, but only 13% of members of parliament come from this background. The OECD's latest How's Life report shows that only 1 in 3 people feel they have an influence over what their government does. Voter turnout is falling, particularly among the young, the poorly paid, and the least educated. Restoring trust will mean governments have to find new ways to engage citizens and address their needs, particularly the most marginalised. It will mean bridging the divides.
The labor movement in the U.S. supports social justice for workers. History has shown that labor's political support goes to those who will work toward that end, regardless of their political party. AFL-CIO President Trumka recently explained to a panel just how difficult it is to work with the current administration to bring about any common goals.
You had 2 factions in the White House. You had one faction that actually had some of the policies that we would have supported on trade and infrastructure, but they turned out to be racist. And on the other hand, you had people that weren't racist, but they were Wall Streeters. And the Wall Streeters began to dominate the administration and has moved his agenda back to everything that I think they fought against in the election. And they're beginning to see that. The committee itself, the manufacturing committee, it never really was a vehicle to provide real policy solutions. In fact, the committee never met.
A lot of talk about tax cuts, stock market values, and interest rates. We're often led to believe those are the issues that will drive us to a better future. If you believe that, you're wrong, according to Guy Ryder, the Director General of the International Labor Organization, a United Nations agency. While those things may occupy the minds of the 1%, the real driver that will get all of us better lives and opportunity, and yes, even greater wealth, is work. Decent work.
Work is, if you like, the chief locomotive of development and better standards of living. And I think the UN and the international community has got that message, and we see it reflected in the agenda. Now, this is all the more necessary because, quite frankly, the state of employment in the world is not great. We know, and the ILO has been emphasising this for many years, unfortunately, that world unemployment is at extremely high levels. There's over 200 million people without work today. The bad news is it's getting worse, not better. On current growth trajectories, there's going to be more unemployed, not less, despite all of the talk of recovery in the global economy. But in addition to that, the crisis has still left a jobs gap of 61 million jobs worldwide. It's destroyed 61 million jobs. The notion that mass unemployment is an inevitability and we have to live with it is a mistaken idea. It would worry me in the first instance that governments, decision makers say, well, we do have to live with unemployment because we cannot do better. That you have to put to one side. And the UN's agenda does say full employment. So I think that this agenda, which, as I say, will guide the international effort on the global economy for the next 15 years, by putting jobs, and decent jobs, at the centre, is getting the right message and giving us tremendous opportunities for the future. If you look back over history, people have always been worried. They've always said, my goodness, here comes the steam engine, here comes the internal combustion engine, here comes the microelectronic revolution. It's going to kill jobs. And strangely enough, the balance, historical balance, is that technology has actually promoted jobs in the long term, but it creates turbulence and disruption in the short term. Technology will disrupt, it will create turbulence. The question is how good we are at managing that change and making sure that the dislocation that happens in the short term eventually gives rise to a longer path, which is positive in terms of more jobs, better opportunities, particularly for our young people. There are going to be winners out of this process, don't deny it. There'll be losers, that's what always happens. But I think in general, whether you think you're going to be a winner or a loser, people are worried about what these changes are going to bring to our societies and how our societies are going to operate. And that's one of the reasons why the ILO is launching a Future of Work initiative as we approach our 100 years birthday, our centenary in 2019. I think we have to understand that we're in an entirely new position when it comes to climate change and everything that goes with that. One thing we've learnt in the ILO and we have to keep very present in our minds is that climate change is our business. It's a world of work issue. We're living in a world which is more and more and more unequal. And I think we all feel it. And that can actually weaken the notion of common purpose, common social cohesion. It's a bit of an us and a them thing. So inequality is a social problem. It's always been a social problem. I think it's an acute social problem. From the ILO, we come to this with a mandate. And our mandate in the end is to promote social justice in the world. And that's the best way to keep our world peaceful. So we come to this with a purpose. All of this thinking about these wildly complicated issues have got, and this is the biggest ambition of all, to lead us to an agenda and a coming together on how we're going to promote social justice in this maelstrom of change.
Right now, more than ever, we need everyone to be 100%, because organizations like the Freedom Fund, our Freedom Foundation, are trying to take the union down by giving people to opt out. And when we are 100%, we have full capacity to work for and protect our workers' rights.
It's about unity and being there in solidarity, and it honors the workers and it supports them and it makes us safe. So it's important. It's an important piece. And I wish this whole state was unionized.
I am 100% union because families in Washington state deserve expert services carried out by highly qualified professionals.
This has been Our View, brought to you by the proud members of the Washington Federation of State Employees. We remind you, when you accept a paycheck for your hard work, you don't give up your rights. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next month.
My name is Gulnara. I was one of 21 million trapped in modern slavery. I come from a poor family. There was no work in my village, so I took a job abroad. They promised me good money with free food and a room. When I got there, I found there was no job. They told me I had to work as a prostitute to pay back what I owed. I refused, but they locked me in a room. Later that day, 2 men came, raped me and beat me. They forced me to have sex with about 30 men every day. After a year, I managed to escape. I was thrown in jail because the police said I was there illegally. I'm still in shock. I can't believe this happened to me. I'm Robin Wright, and this story is real. Go to 50forfreedom.org to join the campaign to end modern slavery.